I'm Wes Hauch, and you are watching ForGuitarPlayersOnly.com.
Hi everyone, John Liebman here. You're watching ForGuitarPlayersOnly.com. We're coming to you today from the Seymour Duncan booth at the 2019 Winter NAMM Show, Anaheim, California. Today with Wes Hauch. How you doing, Wes?
What's going on, man?
It's good to see you. Good to meet you. And I want you to share your story with the people here. You are a guitar player. You've done a lot of notable things. You played a lot of notes. And you're from California originally, right?
Yes,
so let's Fresno, California. Let's tell the people the history, your musical origins, or what it was like when you were growing up, how you were first exposed to music, and how you became a guitar player.
Well, I grew up in.
I got it.
Okay,
Thanks.
cool, right on. Very, how kind of you. I grew up in a town called Yosemite Lakes Park that's like right outside of Fresno, but I always say Fresno because that's where you go to fucking buy toilet paper or groceries or anything, you know what I mean? So, but, you know, it was like skateboarding and guitar, and I wasn't terrible at skateboarding, so I got into guitar probably around the ages of like 12 or 13, and I had a great teacher, a guy named Rich Severson. He's a jazz guy, and he kind of like, you know, taught me a lot of stuff. And then around the time that I got into metal, he kind of just like wasn't a metal guy, so that's when I just started transcribing my favorite songs and everything. And then,
Such as? I mean, who were you into? Who were your influences?
Growing up, it started out with grunge, like it started out with like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, that first Weezer record. Rivers Cuomo is probably like one of my guitar heroes in a way, but then it got into like the first wave of like the early like new school punk, like the Fat records, like NoFX, Propagandhi, Lagwagon. And then I like backtracked from there and I got into Minor Threat and a little bit of like Subhumans and Black Flag. And then I got into metal. My mother's a very deeply religious woman, so like she would take copies of fucking In Utero out of my room. So like having really heavy metal in the house was like out of the question. So I remember there was a summer that I went to a buddy's house, and he had all the shit, man. He had like, you know, all the Anthrax, Sepultura, Metallica, and Pantera records, and I just sat there in his room for a weekend and just fucking binged all of it. And pretty much from there, that's when I started like, you know, trying to play guitar more seriously. And then growing up, well, I guess, you know, I'm fast forwarding now, but I got in some trouble. That I was hanging out with the wrong group of people, and I went to jail for about a month and a half, and then shortly thereafter joined the military. So I spent about 8.5 years in the military, did a bunch of different deployments. I went to Spain, Japan, Guam, and Iraq, and brought a guitar with me the entire time. So like, you know, basically my whole goal was once I got out of the military to start trying to play guitar professionally or with a band or start my own stuff up. And I used my GI Bill to go to Musicians Institute for a little bit, and shortly thereafter, it was sort of like, people think that these two things are related, but I started playing in the Faceless in the very beginning of 2012, and I was good friends with all the guys in Periphery, and I owe them a lot of gratitude because, you know, they let me play on a guest solo on their record alongside like John Petrucci and Guthrie Govan. Like I was, you know, and it was very sweet of them to be able to, you know, to do that for a friend. And sort of like, it was sort of like lightning in a bottle in like 2012. It was like that happened, and then me joining Faceless happened. So it was like all of a sudden I was out gigging and doing exactly what I wanted to do and playing on people's records, and everything sort of, I guess, snowballed since then. I played I've done a lot of fill-in stuff for my friends' bands. Thy Art is Murder. I played with the guys in Black Crown Initiative for a while. I have my own band called Alluvial. We did a tour about a year ago. Our first tour with Animals as Leaders in Vale of Maya, and now
I just saw Tosin Abasi a couple weeks ago or a month or so ago. Wasn't he with Animals as Leaders?
Yes.
Okay.
He's
You just had a blank look on your face. Did I get that wrong? No.
No. That is Tosin and Javier and Matt's band. Yeah, but the thing is, like, right now, I guess, to wrap it up, I have just doing a new record for my band Alluvial, and planning on probably doing some touring this year, and probably as much as, I mean, you know, it's difficult as like basically an extreme metal act in this day and age to go out and, you know, get a booking agent and get offered enough money, you know, to be able to actually make it work in touring, because you're just not, like, you're not that valuable as a brand new band. I mean, it's like you and 600 other fucking people that like that are trying to get on the same tour. So it's like, I don't know. I think that this new record, I think people will like it a lot. I think I would like to, you know, I'm reluctant to talk about all the new people who are in Alluvial right now, but I'm putting out a single pretty soon, and I've thought about doing an EP before we're doing a full length, just to sort of shake the system up a little bit. But yeah, that's pretty much it right now.
All right, I'm curious about one thing. You mentioned that your first teacher was kind of a jazz guy. Did he expose you to some stuff? Is there a part of you, is there a place in your heart that's got a soft spot for jazz?
I would say that, you know, Rich was and is a fantastic player and a musician, and he was, like, you know, taught me a lot of, you know, etiquette about touch and vibrato and a lot of stuff. And you know, the Achilles heel of most metal players, I think, is harmony. You know, like, you go down the rabbit hole of the riff, which is usually a single note thing, and you don't understand harmony beyond like 1, 3, and 5. You don't understand like 7 chords and extensions and everything. So Rich got me thinking about that stuff a lot earlier on. So I guess in some way, you know what I mean? Yeah, I can talk about jazz to some degree, but it all circles back to me playing something on a distorted electric guitar. You know what I mean? Like, as much as I sit there and I, you know, like, I can play some jazz stuff, I am not a jazz guy. I'm a rock and roll guitar player.
Well, that's obvious. I was just curious if you also had, you know, a liking for that.
Yeah, I'm just saying that there's a lot of cats these days who are much more, they're poised to talk about jazz much more than I am, I'd say.
Okay, yeah, because the harmony and the theory and the extensions, that's one thing, but I was talking about the finger snapping, head shaking, foot tapping, you know, toe tapping kind of jazz. But tell me about your gear. I mentioned that we're at the Seymour Duncan booth, so what are you playing?
Well, I play Ibanez guitars. I just got a LA custom shop Iceman 7-string, which is like a dream guitar for me, and those guys have been fantastic to me. Mike Arrigo and all the guys there at the shop, they've taken really, really good care of me, despite the fact that I'm not out there playing, you know, like a ton of shows every year right now, you know. So it was very touching for them to, like, give me access to the custom shop.
Good guys. I saw Mike today with Steve Vai, as a matter of fact.
I'm sure. Yeah, he's got to talk to all the big boys, you know. And I would say, as far as amps go, when I play an amplifier, I play boogie stuff. Right now I've got a TC100, and then I've got a dual rectifier multi-watt, and a boosted rectifier is about the most aggressive sounding amp I think that there is. I mean, there's a lot of great amps out there, but there's something that's so undeniably huge and pissed about a rectifier with a good, like, clean boost in front of it that just, you know, the boogie gain is kind of complex, and it's thick, and sometimes, you know, people think it's a bit muddy, and you got to hit the front end pretty hard to make it pop. But once it does, you're like, oh my god, you know.
How about strings?
Ernie Ball, great company. I play, I guess if we're talking gauges, for a 7-string in standard 10 to 52 plus a 64. And picks, Dunlop stuff. I also really like those, see if I even have one in my pocket right now. I'll show you what. This is, yeah, I do have one. These fucking things, these cool picks, they've got this sandpaper grip on them. Like, they're perfect, and they're kind of like made out of this cool material too. Like, and then I like these big Dunlop sharps, I guess is what you call them.
Okay. What about the future? I mean, you hinted at a couple of things you're working on, a couple of things that are coming up, but what about long range? Is there something that you've always wanted to do that just haven't gotten around to yet?
I would love to play, like, a dream of mine has always been to be able to play that festival circuit in Europe that happens every summer, like the Downloads, the Grass Pops, and all that other stuff. I've been to Europe a handful of times now, but I've never gotten to do those. And that's just like, I did something very close to it. There's, Canada has like something kind of similar to the European style festivals with heavy MTL and heavy TO every year. And I did heavy MTL the other year with, it was like System of a Down headlining, like Deftones. There was the top end of the bill was ridiculous, and then like Summer Slaughter had integrated with it, so there were like 3 stages and a shitload of people and catering and fucking, you know what I mean? Like it's always crazy when you see like a production of that magnitude with your own eyes, like it's something you see, you're like, oh man, and to see what goes into it, is pretty cool, and I would love to do that.
All right. One more question for you. What would you be if you weren't a guitar player? Something outside of music.
I like to think I in another life, if I'd started earlier, I would be an attorney, possibly. Or, no, fuck that, never mind, I'd take that back. I have an interest in law just because I think it's fascinating, you know what I mean? But I would do parkour. You know what I mean? If I could start all the way over, like you see those dudes, they're fucking just whipping around stuff and jumping like across buildings and shit. Like you're basically like a superhuman. You're like one of the X-Men or something. You see that? That's what I would spend my life probably doing, because you could never, like, you imagine you could run from a cop like no problem, or you know what I mean? Or if you're getting chased down by a fucking bear or something like that, you could just run up some damn tree or whatever, you'd be fine.
You're an interesting guy. Well, thanks for sitting down, giving us a few minutes, filling us in. It's an interesting story. We're at the Seymour Duncan booth, and I know Seymour Duncan pickups are a huge part of your sound.
We actually missed that part of it. We are here, sitting here at the Duncan booth.
You mentioned how big your sound is, and I know that the guitar and the amp and the strings and all that.
Yeah, but the Duncan stuff, we're here. Today I was here. I have a new bridge pickup with Seymour Duncan called the Jupiter, and I've been a fan of rail magnet style pickups for a long time, and a lot of people, I think, on the internet, because of my like unapologetic, ate-up fanboy kind of stuff with Pantera in general and that era of metal, Pantera, White Zombie, all that other stuff. A lot of people have thought, oh, well, it's just a 7-string Dimebucker. I would invite you to check it out. It's way, way different. Everyone who's ever checked it out has said, no, it's like a big full frequency ceramic magnet pickup, and it is voiced for what I think is the idealized modern 7-string guitar tone. It's bass, like the low end management on it, and basically how hard it hits the amp. It almost like it's this is a weird way to put it, but it's almost like an idealized EQ curve that you would get from using a boost pedal, but it's like sort of on board in the pickup, but not in the same way, because you could still use a boost and it would still sound awesome with it. I mean, what I guess I'm trying to say is like, when you listen to 7-string guitar tones from the past, it's always been some sort of give and take, or like with pole piece style magnets, like a lot of times things can get a little bit ratty, especially on a ceramic magnet. And there's something just like super smooth and slick about the way my pickup sounds,
Yeah, they do
Not
make
too slick though, not like a, not in like a shot way, like a, oh wow, this is what a 7-string guitar is supposed to sound like kind of way.
They make incredible stuff. I just had the privilege of sitting down with Mr. Seymour Duncan himself this afternoon, and fascinating story about his products and his company and everything else. And I know they're very glad to have you be a part of the family. On location at the Seymour Duncan booth at the 2019 Winter NAMM Show, Anaheim, California, with our special guest, Wes Hauch. I'm John Liepman. You're watching for GuitarPlayersOnly.com.